people say that there is no way to ensure that the Bible is true, but here are a few different reasons about why it must be. The time when it was written is far too early. The Gospels were written well within the time when the eyewitnesses were still alive. They could easily refute it if it was not true, and also Paul's letters were written about a decade or two after the death of Jesus. In his letters to Timothy around 55 AD, he quotes Luke's Gospel. This shows that about 25 years after Jesus' death, at least one Gospel was already written. In the Gospel of Mark, verse 15, it says that Simon of Cyrene, father of Alexander and Rufus, carried the cross when Jesus could not. This openly invites the reader to check with Alexander and Rufus to make sure that the Gospel account is true.
Some say people made up the New Testament for power and wealth, but one of the reasons this is not true is because if they made it up, they would have Jesus taking sides with the church in arguments, but throughout the arguments, Jesus always remained neutral. And another reason is when Jesus rose from the dead, the first eyewitnesses were women, and a woman's testimony wasn't even accepted in court that day. So if the church leaders made up the story, they would definitely have a man be there instead of a woman. And the last example is Mark 14, verse 71, where it shows Peter denying Christ. Peter was the father of the church, so why would they have him denying Christ?
Another reason the Bible is not false is the detail that was in it. Back in that day, the writings, they didn't have much for detail, such as Beowulf didn't have characters noticing rain or how they slept. But nowadays, the fiction is added with detail to make it realistic. Back then, the Bible included weather, time of day, other customs, and ruler names. One example would be Mark 4, 37 through 38, when it talks about a furious storm that came and waves were crashing over the boat, so it was about to be swamped. Jesus was sleeping in the stern of the boat on a cushion. Now that example just shows how much more detail the Bible has than the writings of that day.
There was also no reason for the writers to lie. A person lies out of self-interest. However, the Gospel writers didn't gain from anything they wrote. They had no reason to lie, but every reason to tell the truth.